In this video, we will look at how to calculate the mean, median, and mode from a grouped frequency distribution. Now, the mean, median, and mode are also known as the measures of central tendency, or measures of center. So this is dealing with a grouped frequency distribution. The difficulty with a grouped frequency distribution is that the data values are in groups or classes. Thus, we don't have all of the details of the original data. Since we don't have all the details of the original data, we're going to use the class mark to approximate the x value. So the class mark, again, is the midpoint or the middle value of each class. Let's look at the example and then we'll find the class mark together. Example 2.13 says a frequency table displaying Professor Blunt's last statistics test is shown below. Find the best estimate of the class mean, median, and mode. Again, what's known as the measures of central tendency. Now, the difficulty of these examples is that our data values are hidden. We don't know exactly how many students earned each individual grade. From the table, we know that one student earned somewhere between a 51 and a 56. We know that 4 students earned somewhere between a 63 and a 68. But we don't know if those students earned a 63 or a 64 or a 65 or a 66 or a 67 or a 68. So again, we can approximate the x values of the variables by using the class mark. So the class mark, which is the midpoint, we can find by adding the first number and the second number and dividing by 2. In this case, 107 divided by 2 is 53.5. We can do the same thing with the next class limits. 57 plus 62 divided by 2 is 59.5. Or we can use the class width. The class width, if you remember, is the difference between 2 consecutive lower class limits. The class width here is 6. From here, we can just add 6 to each of the prior numbers. 59.5 plus 6 is 65.5, plus 6 is 71.5, plus 6 is 77.5, plus 6 is 83.5, plus 6 is 89.5, plus 6 is 65.5. So again, the class mark is the midpoint, or the estimate, for the grades based off of the classes or groups of data that we have. So now we have a frequency distribution with the class mark as the midpoint, the approximation for each of these grades in the first column, along with their frequency. Now, to enter these into Geogebra, we are going to use the on-screen keyboard. The on-screen keyboard will be the same if you are using a phone-based app or a tablet-based app. You can do the same inputs with your keyboard if you are using a laptop or if you have an alternative keyboard attached to your tablet. I'm just going to use the on-screen keyboard for everyone to follow what I'm doing. So what we need to do is give Geogebra both lists of information. The first list of information we are going to give it is the grade. I'm going to use the word grade as my definition for the variable. Grade equals, and then I need to enter all of those class marks. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to use the set brackets, or the curly brackets, which can be found in the f of x screen. Then I'm going to go back to the number screen and enter all of these values in order. 53.5, comma, 59.5, comma, 65.5, comma, 71.5, comma, 77.5, comma, 83.5, comma, 89.5, comma, and lastly, 95.5. I made an error on my video. Let's change that. 95.5. I was looking back here when I originally did this. All right, so now I have all of the grades entered into my GeoGebra screen. Again, I use the curly brackets because this is a set. From here, I can either use the letter F, or I can spell out the word frequency. Oh, I shouldn't spell out the word frequency because it's going to use that. Let's just use the letter F. F equals, oops, accidentally clicked something else. F equals, and then we're going to use the curly brackets again. The curly brackets are for the set notation. We are telling GeoGebra that we are entering a set of data values. And it's important for us to follow the same order as our grades. So if we entered 53.5 first, the frequency for that number needs to go first here. So we need to make sure that we have all of the associated frequencies entered in the correct order. We're going to enter them with a comma between them. Press enter when we are done. And then from here we can find the mean by typing in MEAN. I'm not a big fan of using these drop-down menus. I'm just going to continue typing here. We're going to find the mean of the grades along with their frequencies. So we will type in mean of grade comma F, or whatever variable we used to define the first set of data. We could use the letter A or the letter G or whatever other letter we want to. Just make sure that we're using the correct letters for the correct variables. So the mean here is 76 point, we'll just call it 9. The mean grade is 76.9. Next, we can type in the median. Median, again, I'm not a huge fan of using the drop-down menus, so I'm just going to type this in. Median, open parentheses, grade, comma, F. Again, whatever letter or identifier we used for the first set of data is what we type in here, comma, the second variable that we've entered, which in this case I've used the letter F. And we could find that the median is 77.5. Now let's pause here for a second because we need to know what symbol should we put for the mean. Remember that there is no symbol for the median, but we can use a symbol for the mean. This example says a distribution displaying Professor Blunt's last statistics test is shown. So I'm reading this as population data. Since I'm reading this as population data, we can find the population mean, which is the Greek symbol mu. If it said some of the test grades are here, or a sample of Professor Blunt's last statistic test is shown here, then I would use X bar. But because they're kind of vague with this example, and I'm reading this as all of the students in the test being shown, I'm going to use the population mean. Now lastly, it asks us to find the mode. The mode, again, is just the data value that occurs the most frequently. So let's look at the frequency distribution portion here. In the frequency, this is the number of times that the data values occur. We have 4, 4, and 4 for the highest frequencies. Since I don't think that there is any single value that occurs the most frequent, I would say that there is no mode. An argument could be made for this being trimodal in that there are 3 modes, but because if we look at the difference between 4 and 3, which is the next value or the next highest frequency, I don't think that there's any single data value that stands out from all the others, so I think that this can be referred to as having no mode. And that's how we find the measures of central tendency using GeoGebra.